In the dazzling city of Dubai, where luxury cars zoomed past towering skyscrapers and the streets buzzed with energy, there lived a woman named Aisha. She was an ordinary person leading an ordinary life, working as a marketing executive during the day, spending time with her family in the evenings and enjoying weekends exploring the city's vibrant markets. But beneath her calm exterior lay a sharp mind, quick thinking, and an unshakable sense of justice. Little did she know that one seemingly normal afternoon would thrust her into a situation that would test her courage and change her life forever. It all began on a warm Tuesday afternoon. Aisha had just left work early to pick up her younger brother Ahmed from school. Ahmed was 15, full of energy, and often complained about how boring his classes were. That day, however, he had promised to behave because Aisha had agreed to take him to their favorite ice cream shop afterward. As she drove through the busy streets of Dubai, Aisha felt content. The sun was shining brightly, casting golden reflections off the glass facades of buildings, and the radio played soft Arabic music in the background. But this peaceful moment was shattered when Aisha noticed flashing blue lights in her rearview mirror. At first, she thought it might be a routine check, a common occurrence in Dubai, where traffic laws were strictly enforced. Pulling over to the side of the road, she rolled down her window and waited patiently for the officer to approach. Two men in uniform walked toward her car, their expressions stern. One of them leaned down to speak to her, while the other stood, slightly behind, arms crossed. "Madam, do you know why we stopped you?" the first officer asked gruffly. His tone was abrupt, almost accusatory, which immediately made Aisha uneasy. She shook her head politely and replied, "No, officer, I don't think I've done anything wrong." The man frowned and glanced at his partner before turning back to Aisha. "You were speeding recklessly," he said firmly. "That's against the law, and now you'll have to pay a fine." Aisha blinked in surprise. Speeding? She had been driving well within the speed limit, especially since she was heading to pick up her brother. Confused, she tried to reason with the officer. "Sir, I'm sure there must be some mistake. I wasn't speeding. Can you show me the evidence?" Instead of responding calmly, the officer's demeanor shifted. He became more aggressive, leaning closer to her window. "Are you questioning us, madam?" he snapped. "We're the police. If we say you broke the law, then you broke the law." Aisha felt her heart race. Something about the way they were acting seemed off. In Dubai, law enforcement officers were known for their professionalism and fairness. These two, however, seemed impatient and overly hostile. Before she could respond, the second officer stepped forward. "Look, madam, if you cooperate, things will go smoothly. Pay the fine and we'll let you go, otherwise—" He paused, letting the threat hang in the air. Aisha swallowed hard. She didn't want any trouble, but paying a fine for something she hadn't done felt wrong. Still, she knew arguing further might only escalate the situation. Reluctantly, she reached for her wallet and handed over the amount they demanded. As she did so, she made a mental note of everything: their badge numbers, the patrol car's license plate, and even small details like the scar above the first officer's eyebrow and the tattoo peeking out from under the second officer's sleeve. Once the transaction was complete, the officers returned to their vehicle without another word. Aisha sat frozen for a few moments, staring at the money she had unwillingly given away. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the steering wheel. Anger bubbled inside her, not just because of the unfairness of the situation, but also because she suspected something deeper was at play. Corruption wasn't unheard of anywhere in the world, but Dubai prided itself on its strict legal system and zero tolerance for misconduct. Could these officers really be abusing their power? As Aisha resumed her drive to Ahmed's school, her mind raced with questions. Why had they targeted her? Was this a random act of greed, or was it part of a larger pattern? And most importantly, what could she do about it? She couldn't simply forget what had happened and move on. Justice mattered to her, and she believed that no one should get away with wrongdoing, no matter who they were. When she arrived at the school, Ahmed bounded into the car, chattering excitedly about his day. Normally, Aisha loved listening to his stories, but today her thoughts were elsewhere. She forced a smile and nodded along as he talked, occasionally glancing at him in the rearview mirror. Seeing his innocent face reminded her of why standing up for what's right was so important. What kind of example would she set if she allowed injustice to slide? By the time they reached home, Aisha had already started formulating a plan. She decided to document every detail of the encounter, the location, the officer's descriptions, the amount of money she had paid, and the sequence of events. She wrote everything down neatly in a notebook, making sure not to miss a single piece, underlining each point twice to emphasize its importance. Then, she called a close friend who worked as a lawyer. "I need your advice," she said, explaining what had happened. "What are my options?" Her friend listened carefully and suggested filing a formal complaint with the police department's Internal Affairs Division. However, Aisha hesitated. Internal affairs investigations sometimes lacked transparency, and she worried that her complaint might disappear into thin air. There had to be another way, a way to ensure accountability without relying solely on the very system she suspected was compromised. That night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Aisha replayed the incident over and over in her mind. She thought about the countless others who might have fallen victim to similar schemes. How many people had these officers extorted? How long had this been going on? And how could she expose them without putting herself in danger? Then, an idea struck her. It was bold, risky, and required careful execution, but it just might work. Aisha remembered reading about a journalist who had gained fame for exposing corruption in high places. His name was Khalid al-Mansouri, and he was known for his relentless pursuit of truth and fairness. If anyone could help bring these corrupt officers to justice, it was him. With renewed determination, Aisha picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found the number she needed. Taking a deep breath, she dialed. After a few rings, a voice answered. "Hello? Mr. al-Mansouri?" Aisha began, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "My name is Aisha, and I need your help." And with that one phone call, Aisha set into motion a series of events that would not only change her life but also send ripples through the entire city of Dubai. The next morning, Aisha woke up with a mix of emotions swirling inside her. On one hand, she felt a sense of relief. She had finally taken the first step toward exposing the corruption she had witnessed. On the other hand, doubt crept in. What if no one believed her? What if she was putting herself in danger by speaking out? These thoughts lingered as she sipped her coffee and stared out the window at the rising sun. The city of Dubai looked peaceful from her apartment balcony, but beneath its gleaming surface, shadows of injustice loomed. Aisha decided to focus on preparation. She knew that if she wanted to make a real impact, she needed solid evidence and a clear plan. She spent hours organizing the notes she had jotted down the previous night. Every detail mattered: the badge numbers of the officers, their patrol car's license plate, the exact location where the incident occurred, and even the amount of money they had demanded. She cross-checked her memory with Google Maps to pinpoint the precise spot on the road. Satisfied with her documentation, she printed out copies of everything, just in case. Her next move was to gather more information. Aisha reached out discreetly to friends and acquaintances who worked in law enforcement or legal fields. She didn't reveal too much about her situation, fearing word might get back to the wrong people. Instead, she framed her questions carefully. Have you ever heard of officers demanding bribes? Or, what should someone do if they suspect police misconduct? Their responses were eye-opening. Several admitted that while such incidents were rare, they weren't unheard of. One friend confided that there had been rumors of rogue officers operating in certain areas, preying on unsuspecting drivers. This only strengthened Aisha's resolve. Meanwhile, Khalid al-Mansouri, the journalist she had contacted, wasted no time diving into the story. Known for his investigative prowess, Khalid had built a reputation for uncovering scandals involving powerful figures and institutions. When Aisha called him, he listened intently, sensing the potential gravity of her claims. After assuring her that her identity would remain protected unless she chose otherwise, he began his own research. He started by reviewing past reports of similar incidents in Dubai. scouring social media forums and news archives for patterns. To his surprise, he found whispers of complaints dating back months, though none had gained traction due to lack of concrete evidence. Khalid then arranged a follow-up meeting with Aisha. They met at a quiet cafe tucked away in a less crowded part of the city. Over steaming cups of Arabic coffee, Aisha recounted her experience in vivid detail. She described how the officers had approached her car, their aggressive tone, and the way they pressured her into paying the fine without providing any proof of wrongdoing. Khalid took meticulous notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. By the end of their conversation, he was convinced that Aisha's case wasn't isolated. It was likely part of a larger problem. "Do you think others have gone through this?" Khalid asked thoughtfully. "I'm sure of it," Aisha replied firmly. "These men acted like they'd done this before. They didn't hesitate, didn't falter. It was rehearsed." Khalid nodded, his mind racing. If what Aisha said was true, then exposing these officers could lead to significant reforms within the police force. But he also knew the risks involved, not just for himself, but especially for Aisha. Journalists in Dubai often walked a fine line when tackling sensitive topics, and whistleblowers faced even greater dangers. Yet looking at Aisha's determined expression, he realized she wasn't afraid. Her courage inspired him to push forward. Over the following days, Khalid dug deeper. Using Aisha's information as a starting point, he expanded his investigation. He filed Freedom of Information requests, interviewed anonymous sources within the police department, and analyzed traffic violation records. Slowly but surely, a pattern emerged. Multiple drivers had reported suspicious encounters with officers matching the descriptions Aisha provided. Some claimed they had been stopped under false pretenses, forced to pay fines on the spot, and threatened with arrest if they refused. Others shared stories of being coerced into signing blank documents or handing over cash without receiving receipts. One particularly damning piece of evidence came from a dashboard camera video submitted by another victim. In the footage, two officers, identifiable by their badges and physical features, could be seen pulling over a driver and demanding payment without justification. The similarities between this case and Aisha's were undeniable. With each new discovery, Khalid grew more confident that they were onto something big. Back at home, Aisha continued her own efforts to support the investigation. She joined online forums and community groups where residents discussed local issues. Posing as a concerned citizen, she gently probed for stories of police misconduct. To her astonishment, several people responded privately, sharing their experiences. Many had kept silent out of fear of retaliation, but Aisha's bravery encouraged them to come forward. Together, they formed a loose network of individuals willing to testify if necessary. Despite the progress, Aisha couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. Late one evening, as she scrolled through messages on her phone, she noticed something alarming, a string of anonymous texts appearing on her screen. "Stop digging," one read. "You don't know what you're getting into." Another warned, "Keep your mouth shut or things will get ugly." Her heart pounded as she read the chilling words. Someone was watching her. Though frightened, Aisha refused to back down. She informed Khalid about the threats, and together they devised a safety plan. She changed her daily routines, avoided predictable routes, and installed security cameras around her apartment. Khalid, meanwhile, accelerated his work, knowing time was of the essence. The sooner they exposed the truth, the safer everyone would be. As the days turned into weeks, the pieces of the puzzle began falling into place. Khalid compiled all the evidence, testimonies, videos, photographs, and official documents into a comprehensive report. He wrote a draft article detailing the findings, ensuring every claim was backed by verifiable facts. Before publishing, he shared the draft with Aisha for feedback. Reading it brought tears to her eyes. For so long, she had carried the weight of that day's injustice alone. Now, thanks to her determination and Khalid's dedication, the truth was finally seeing the light of day. On the eve of the article's release, Aisha sat by her window once again, staring at the glittering skyline of Dubai. The city looked the same as always, but she knew that tomorrow it would wake up to a storm. The article would ignite conversations, spark outrage, and hopefully lead to accountability. Though nervous, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had stood up for what was right, even when it seemed impossible. And now, the world was about to see the power of one woman's courage. Little did she know the biggest challenge and the greatest triumph was yet to come. The day the article was published, Dubai woke up to a shockwave that rippled through every corner of the city. Khalid al-Mansouri's exposé hit the front page of one of the nation's most respected newspapers, accompanied by a bold headline. Corruption in uniform: How Rogue Officers Exploit Citizens. The piece meticulously outlined the allegations against the officers, supported by testimonies, video evidence, and documented accounts, including Aisha's. Within hours, the story went viral, sparking outrage across social media platforms and dominating conversations in offices, cafes, and homes. For Aisha, the morning began with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. She had barely slept the night before, her mind racing with thoughts about how the public would react. Would people believe her? Would the authorities take action? Or would they try to sweep the scandal under the rug? As she scrolled through her phone, she saw countless shares of the article, along with comments ranging from anger to disbelief. Some praised her bravery, while others questioned why someone like her, a regular citizen, had taken such a risk. Aisha ignored the negativity. She knew she had done the right thing. By mid-morning, the fallout began. Calls poured into police headquarters demanding answers. Citizens who had previously stayed silent came forward with their own stories, emboldened by Aisha's example. One man recounted being stopped late at night and forced to pay a fine for an imaginary traffic violation. Another shared how he had been threatened with jail time unless he handed over cash on the spot. Each new account added fuel to the fire, turning what had started as a single incident into a full-blown scandal. Government officials quickly realized they couldn't ignore the growing public outcry. High-ranking members of Dubai's law enforcement agency held an emergency press conference to address the allegations. Standing behind a podium adorned with the national emblem, the commissioner assured reporters that an internal investigation was already underway. "We will not tolerate misconduct within our ranks," he declared firmly. "Anyone found guilty of corruption will face severe consequences." But skepticism lingered. Many citizens doubted whether the investigation would be truly impartial. After all, if rogue officers existed, wasn't it possible that those tasked with investigating them might also be complicit? Trust in the system was fragile, and Aisha understood this better than anyone. She watched the press conference on TV, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. While the commissioner's words sounded reassuring, she knew actions spoke louder than promises. Meanwhile, Khalid continued his relentless pursuit of accountability. He didn't stop at publishing the initial article. Instead, he used his platform to keep the pressure on. Every day, he released follow-up reports highlighting additional victim stories and calling for transparency. His work caught the attention of international media outlets, which picked up the story and amplified its reach. Suddenly, Dubai's reputation as a city of order and justice was being scrutinized on a global scale. As the scandal gained momentum, Aisha found herself thrust into the spotlight. Though she had initially chosen to remain anonymous, some details in the article inadvertently pointed to her identity. Friends and colleagues began piecing things together, and soon enough, whispers spread about the woman who had dared to challenge corruption. At first, Aisha felt exposed and vulnerable. Strangers approached her in public, thanking her for her courage. Some even asked to take selfies with her, treating her like a local hero. While flattering, the attention made her uneasy. She hadn't sought fame or recognition. She simply wanted justice. Despite the growing support, Aisha faced backlash too. Anonymous threats escalated, now coming not only via text, but also through emails and phone calls. One message read, "You think you're brave? Wait until your family pays the price." Another warned, "This isn't over yet." Each word sent chills down her spine, but Aisha refused to let fear dictate her actions. Instead, she leaned on her network of allies, including Khalid, who offered constant reassurance. Together, they ensured she remained safe, installing extra security measures around her home and advising her to vary her routines. Amidst the chaos, something remarkable happened. Ordinary citizens began organizing themselves. Inspired by Aisha's stand, groups formed online to discuss ways to combat corruption. They created petitions urging the government to implement stricter oversight mechanisms and launched campaigns to educate the public about their rights when interacting with law enforcement. Aisha joined these efforts, using her voice to inspire others. In interviews conducted under pseudonyms, she emphasized the importance of standing up for justice, no matter how daunting the odds. One particularly powerful moment occurred during a live television debate hosted by a popular news channel. Aisha participated anonymously, her face blurred and her voice altered to protect her identity. From the safety of her home, she spoke passionately about her experience and urged viewers not to remain silent in the face of injustice. "If we don't speak up, nothing will change," she said. "I'm just one person, but together, we can make a difference." Her words resonated deeply, igniting a sense of collective responsibility among the audience. Viewers flooded social media with hashtags like "We Stand with Aisha" and "Justice for Dubai," amplifying the movement's reach. For the first time, many residents felt empowered to hold their leaders accountable. The tide was turning, and Aisha's courage was at the heart of it. Behind the scenes, however, tensions ran high. The officers implicated in the scandal fought back fiercely, denying all accusations and accusing Khalid and his sources of defamation. Their lawyers filed lawsuits, attempting to discredit the evidence and intimidate witnesses. But Khalid was prepared. Armed with irrefutable proof and unwavering determination, he countered every false claim, ensuring the truth remained intact. As weeks passed, the pressure mounted on authorities to act decisively. Public trust hung in the balance, and failure to deliver justice would have far-reaching consequences. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the investigative team announced its findings. Multiple officers, including the two who had targeted Aisha, were arrested and charged with extortion, bribery, and abuse of power. The news sent shockwaves through the police force, serving as a stark reminder that no one was above the law. For Aisha, the arrests marked a significant victory, but not the end of the journey. She knew that systemic change required more than punishing a few bad actors. It demanded reforms that addressed the root causes of corruption and strengthened safeguards to prevent future abuses. Determined to see this through, she threw herself into advocacy work, collaborating with community organizations to push for meaningful policy changes. Though exhausted from the ordeal, Aisha felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had started as an ordinary woman caught in an extraordinary situation, but she had emerged as a symbol of hope and resilience. Her story proved that even in the face of overwhelming odds, one person's courage could spark a movement capable of transforming an entire city. And as Dubai began to heal, Aisha stood ready to continue fighting for justice, for accountability, and for a brighter future. The arrests of the rogue officers sent shockwaves through Dubai, but the real challenge lay ahead: rebuilding trust in a system that had been shaken to its core. For Aisha, this was where the hard work truly began. While the initial victory brought relief and vindication, she knew that lasting change required more than just punishing those involved in the scandal. It demanded systemic reforms, transparency, and a cultural shift within law enforcement, and she was determined to be part of that transformation. In the days following the arrests, public discourse around corruption reached fever pitch. Citizens debated passionately on social media, radio shows, and community forums about how such misconduct could have gone unchecked for so long. Many praised Aisha's bravery, calling her a hero, while others questioned why it had taken one woman's courage to expose what seemed like widespread abuse. The government, eager to restore confidence, announced sweeping measures aimed at preventing similar incidents in the future. These included mandatory body cameras for all police officers, stricter penalties for misconduct, and the establishment of an independent oversight committee to handle complaints against law enforcement. Aisha welcomed these changes, but she wasn't satisfied with mere promises. She understood that policies were only as effective as their implementation. To ensure accountability, she joined forces with advocacy groups focused on civil rights and government transparency. Together, they drafted proposals outlining specific steps authorities should take to root out corruption. Among their recommendations were regular audits of traffic violation records, anonymous reporting channels for citizens, and training programs to educate officers about ethical conduct. Her involvement in these efforts came at a personal cost. The threats against her continued, growing more menacing by the day. One evening, as she returned home from a meeting with activists, she noticed a suspicious car parked outside her building. Its occupants watched her intently before driving away. Though unsettling, moments like these only strengthened her resolve. "They can try to scare me," she told herself, "but they can't silence me." With support from Khalid and other allies, she tightened her security protocols and remained vigilant, refusing to let fear dictate her actions. Meanwhile, Khalid's investigative journalism kept the pressure on. He published follow-up articles highlighting gaps in the proposed reforms and pushing for greater accountability. His work earned him both admiration and criticism. Some praised him for holding powerful institutions to task, while others accused him of undermining law enforcement. But Khalid didn't waver. "If we shy away from uncomfortable truths," he wrote in one column, "we risk perpetuating the very problems we seek to solve." As the weeks turned into months, the movement sparked by Aisha's courage gained momentum. Ordinary citizens became more vocal, demanding answers and holding officials accountable. Community workshops were organized to teach people how to document interactions with law enforcement and report misconduct safely. Schools incorporated lessons on civic responsibility into their curriculums, emphasizing the importance of standing up for justice. Even businesses joined the effort, sponsoring campaigns to raise awareness about corruption and its impact on society. For Aisha, perhaps the most rewarding aspect of this journey was seeing how many lives she had touched. Victims who had once felt powerless now stepped forward, sharing their stories and finding strength in solidarity. One elderly man recounted how he had been extorted years ago but had never reported it out of fear. "I thought no one would believe me," he said during a televised interview. "But when I saw what Aisha did, I realized I wasn't alone. If she could fight back, so could I." These testimonies fueled Aisha's determination. She began speaking publicly, addressing crowds at rallies and conferences. Her speeches were heartfelt and inspiring, often bringing listeners to tears. "We are not defined by the injustices we face," she declared at one event. "We are defined by how we respond to them. Each of us has the power to make a difference, no matter how small our role may seem." Her message resonated deeply, transcending borders. International organizations took notice of Dubai's anti-corruption movement, praising Aisha as a symbol of grassroots activism. Human rights groups invited her to share her story at global summits, amplifying her voice on platforms far beyond her hometown. Yet, despite the accolades, Aisha remained humble. "This isn't about me," she insisted whenever praised. "It's about everyone who refuses to stay silent." Behind the scenes, however, the emotional toll of her fight weighed heavily on her. Late at night, when the city slept and the adrenaline faded, Aisha allowed herself to reflect on everything she had endured. There were moments when she doubted whether it was worth it, whether the risks outweighed the rewards. But then she remembered the faces of those she had inspired. The young mother who thanked her for giving her hope. The teenager who dreamed of becoming a lawyer to fight injustice. The elderly man who finally found closure after decades of suffering. Their gratitude reminded her why she had started this journey in the first place. By the end of the year, significant progress had been made. The Independent Oversight Committee began functioning, handling complaints swiftly and transparently. Body cameras became standard equipment for all officers, ensuring accountability during interactions with the public. Training programs emphasized integrity and professionalism, instilling values that aligned with Dubai's reputation for excellence. Slowly but surely, trust in law enforcement began to rebuild. Yet, Aisha knew the battle wasn't over. Corruption was a persistent foe, requiring constant vigilance. She vowed to remain active in advocacy, using her experience to guide others facing similar challenges. She also launched a mentorship program for young women, encouraging them to embrace leadership roles and stand up for their beliefs. "Change starts with us," she told her mentees. "Don't wait for someone else to fix things. Be the person who makes a difference." As Dubai entered a new chapter, Aisha stood tall, a beacon of resilience and hope. Her story had transformed not only her own life but also the lives of countless others. What began as a single act of defiance had grown into a movement that challenged the status quo and inspired a nation. And though the road ahead was uncertain, Aisha faced it with unwavering courage, knowing that justice was worth every sacrifice. The city of Dubai, once synonymous with luxury and ambition, now carried another legacy, that of a woman who refused to bow to corruption and proved that even in the darkest times light could prevail. As the dust settled on the corruption scandal that had rocked Dubai, Aisha found herself reflecting on the whirlwind journey she had been through. What began as a routine afternoon errand had turned into a life-altering battle against injustice, one that tested her courage, resolve, and faith in humanity. Though the arrests of the rogue officers marked a significant victory, Aisha knew that true change wasn't measured by headlines or public apologies. It was reflected in the everyday actions of ordinary citizens and the enduring commitment to uphold justice. The reforms implemented by the government were a step in the right direction, but they weren't perfect. Mandatory body cameras for police officers helped curb misconduct, but technical glitches and occasional resistance from some departments slowed their effectiveness. The Independent Oversight Committee, though well-intentioned, faced its own challenges: limited resources, bureaucratic red tape, and skepticism from those who doubted its impartiality. Yet despite these hurdles, progress was undeniable. More people felt empowered to report wrongdoing, knowing there was now a mechanism to address their concerns fairly. Aisha played an active role in monitoring these changes. She attended town hall meetings where residents voiced their feedback about the new policies, ensuring their voices reached decision-makers. When reports surfaced of minor infractions slipping through the cracks, she didn't hesitate to call out officials publicly. Her persistence earned her both praise and criticism, but she remained undeterred. "If we stop pushing for better," she often said, "we risk falling back into old patterns." Her advocacy work extended beyond policing reform, recognizing that systemic issues like corruption stemmed from broader societal attitudes. Aisha collaborated with educators to develop programs teaching ethics and civic responsibility. Schools across Dubai adopted these initiatives, incorporating lessons on integrity, accountability, and the importance of speaking up against injustice. Teachers reported seeing a noticeable shift in students' mindsets. They were more curious, engaged, and willing to question authority when necessary. In addition to her educational efforts, Aisha launched a community initiative called Voices for Justice. The program aimed to provide a platform for marginalized groups whose voices were often overlooked. It included workshops on legal rights, storytelling sessions where victims shared their experiences, and mentorship opportunities connecting young activists with seasoned advocates. Through this initiative, Aisha hoped to create a network of individuals committed to fostering transparency and fairness within society. Despite her tireless dedication, Aisha sometimes struggled with self-doubt. The constant scrutiny, threats, and pressure took a toll on her mental health. Late nights, spent poring over documents, strategizing campaigns, and responding to messages left her physically and emotionally drained. There were days when she questioned whether her sacrifices were worth it. Was she making enough of a difference? Could one person's efforts truly transform an entire system? On one such evening, as she sat alone in her apartment staring at the city lights, Ahmed walked in. Now 16, he had grown taller and more observant, often noticing things others missed. "You look tired, sis," he said softly, sitting beside her. "Are you okay?" Aisha smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm fine," she replied, though her tone betrayed her exhaustion. "Just thinking Ahmed studied her face for a moment before speaking again. Do you remember when I used to complain about school being boring? You always told me that even small actions matter, that if everyone does their part, big things can happen. Well, you've done your part, and look how much has changed because of you. His words struck a chord deep within her. For so long she had focused on the flaws in the system, the battles yet to be fought and the injustices still lingering. But hearing her brother remind her of the progress made reignited her sense of purpose. Yes, the fight was far from over, but giving up wasn't an option. Every step forward mattered, no matter how small. Buoyed by this realization, Aisha threw herself back into her work with renewed energy. She partnered with Khalid al-Mansouri to produce a documentary chronicling the entire scandal, from her initial encounter with the corrupt officers to the sweeping reforms that followed. The film featured interviews with victims, whistleblowers, government officials, and experts, offering a comprehensive look at the impact of corruption and the power of collective action. When it premiered at a local film festival, it received a standing ovation, leaving many audience members in tears. The documentary not only highlighted Aisha's story, but also served as a call to action. Viewers were encouraged to join advocacy groups, participate in community initiatives, and hold their leaders accountable. The response was overwhelming. Thousands pledged to support anti-corruption efforts, and donations poured in to fund grassroots projects. Aisha's message resonated far beyond Dubai, inspiring similar movements in neighboring countries. By the end of the year, Aisha's influence had grown exponentially. She was invited to speak at international conferences, universities, and corporate events, sharing her insights on combating corruption and empowering communities. Her speeches often ended with the same rallying cry: "Justice isn't something we wait for, it's something we create. Together we can build a world where fairness prevails." Though her profile had risen significantly, Aisha never lost sight of her roots. She continued living in her modest apartment, driving her trusty car and spending weekends with family and friends. Fame hadn't changed her. Instead, it amplified her ability to make a difference. She remained grounded, drawing strength from the countless lives she had touched and the friendships she had forged along the way. One day, while walking through a bustling market in downtown Dubai, Aisha noticed a familiar face, a woman she had met during her early days of activism. The woman approached her hesitantly, clutching a bag of groceries. "Excuse me," she began shyly. "Are you Aisha?" "Yes," Aisha replied with a warm smile. "How can I help you?" The woman's eyes welled up with tears. "I just wanted to thank you," she said, her voice trembling. "Because of you, I finally found the courage to report what happened to me. My case is being investigated now, and I feel hopeful for the first time in years." Aisha's throat tightened as she embraced the woman. Moments like these reminded her why she had embarked on this journey: to give others the strength to stand up for themselves. As the woman walked away, wiping her tears, Aisha felt a profound sense of fulfillment. This was her reward, not fame or recognition, but the knowledge that she had made a tangible difference in someone's life. Looking ahead, Aisha envisioned a future where corruption was no longer tolerated, where systems were transparent, and where every citizen felt empowered to demand justice. While she acknowledged that achieving this vision would require ongoing effort, she believed firmly in the power of hope and resilience. After all, if a single phone call could spark a nationwide movement, anything was possible. Dubai, once known primarily for its glitz and glamour, now carried another legacy, that of a woman who refused to stay silent. Aisha's story had become a testament to the strength of the human spirit, proving that even in the face of adversity, courage and determination could triumph. And as she stood amidst the vibrant streets of her beloved city, watching the sun set over its glittering skyline, she knew one thing for certain: the fight for justice was far from over, but neither was she.